So I recently purchased the Secret Wars Wave 2 Magik and Falcon. And then I started watching a couple of reviews, as one does, and I confirmed that every single one of these figures in this wave is in some way flawed, more so than usual. So flawed, in fact, that it feels like Hasbro had their B team design this wave. I don't own the rest of the figures in this wave, so this is not a review, but I did want to talk about it. I'm Glen, and this is Super Articulated. So originally I wanted to do the whole wave in one video, but I am tight on time right now. So I'm actually just going to talk about Constrictor, Absorbing Man, and Spider-Man, the three characters that I don't actually own. Now right off the bat, I want to say that none of these figures are actually bad. They just have truly odd design decisions behind them that I don't understand. Let's start with Constrictor. I want to say the good before I get into, the criticism. He's definitely an upgrade over the previous Terex or Arnim Zola wave. He's got a lot of the same points of articulation as that old figure, but he's on a base body that is much better sculpted. And they do something interesting to save a little bit on budget. They reuse those Omega Red tendrils, give them a new deco design, and they're almost unrecognizable. Perfect way to reuse an old part. I love the expression, the colors are great, the classic orange and blue complementary colors, and that's about it. Not bad, but there are just a couple of weird design decisions that it seems like the different departments weren't talking to each other when this particular figure was designed. So first they do something funny. Vulcan is the base body, right? And the forearm is a separate piece. But instead of being kind of like a free point of articulation, even though it would just spin in place, it's keyed in and sonic welded together, not glued like I said in the previous video. But on Constrictor, they had to figure out how to get his tendrils to attach to his arm, and the way that they did that was create a separate forearm piece without articulation in the wrist so that the tendril could actually plug in and fit into the little sleeve that pops out of the arm. And I don't own the figure, but presumably that means the forearm can swivel in place. And that means because of the way the pinless arms are created, they had to sculpt an entire new arm to be able to achieve that. And if they had just put a swivel in that original Vulcan body, they wouldn't have had to waste their budget on something like this. Additionally, if they had thought ahead a little bit, known that they were going to have to put a swivel in the forearm, they could have retained the articulation in the wrist by switching the hinge from the bottom of the hand to the top of the wrist. And it would have allowed the wrist to rotate and swivel in place independently of that little sleeve coming out. But that's not the weird part. The weird part is the deco design. With all of these Marvel Legends figures, they have a bunch of horizontal cuts. There's one just below the waist, there's two at the forearms, there's two at the calves, and there's two at the thigh. And those cuts bisect the sculpt for the sake of articulation. And because of that, there's a tiny bit of a gap. And for whatever reason, they're completely ignored. And there's all these horizontal lines that run across the costume design of Constrictor's suit. It's like the deco designer forgot that they were working on an action figure. It's most obvious on the waist, where one of the segments is just completely cut in half. And there's also one at the top of the ab crunch. There's an awkward one at the boot swivel too, and that just was not taken advantage of. And I think on the original, they sort of do what I'm saying, at least maybe for the legs, or I can't remember. But if they had just put in a little extra effort, they could have actually saved money on those deco hits. What do those cost? 2 cents? For, I don't know, 10,000 figures, that's a couple $100, right? Save money where you can while synergizing the sculpt, articulation, and deco of the figure. So on to Absorbing Man, or Man, I should say. He does not include anything to absorb for such an interesting visual power set. They just included nothing, which is wild. And considering he was never part, I mean, he was part of the Secret Wars storyline, but he was never a part of that original toy line, what is he doing here? I mean, they're doing the throwback anniversary Hulk packaging, whatever. This would have been a perfect release for that planogram or whatever they call it, especially because they're charging, you know, a little bit more money this time around. If you saw the pre-orders for Doc Samson, you'd know. Put Absorbing Man in the Hulk wave and actually give him some arms to show off his abilities like every other Absorbing Man action figure ever made. Okay, set that aside. Besides that, man, one head with just normal male pattern baldness and the other head with alopecia. And otherwise, the only real deco hits are on the arms and legs. And both are not designed well. So the arm hair on the forearm, there's no transition between the other two pieces of the arm. It's just bicep, elbow, and then forearm with a bunch of hair on it. But then the pattern of the arm hair doesn't follow the natural path of the follicles. It kind of looks like somebody took a bunch of commas and made it into a brush in Photoshop and just sprayed it on the arm real quick and then said, done. It looks comically cartoonish in comparison to the realistic texture of the pants and the realistic portraits of the face. It's like it's not following like a style guide or something. And you know how I talked about on Constrictor, where the horizontal lines just completely ignored the breaks in the sculpt? Well, it's the same thing on Absorbing Man. The black lines that run across his pants just completely ignore the thigh cut. And all they would have had to do is just adjust those lines a little bit up or a little bit down. Or maybe like decrease the line spacing, or better yet, for their budget, increase the line spacing. And I don't know, it just would have felt a lot more satisfying. But I forgot to talk about the good things about him. What are the good things? The portraits are good. You know, they convey an actual character to them. This figure's probably going to go on sale really quickly, so you can get them at a deep discount. That's what I'm waiting for, at least. And I think a lot of people are too. So honestly, I think if they didn't have the budget, don't do the figure. It's a Secret Wars wave, maybe repaint that Walgreens exclusive Baron Zemo. You wouldn't have had to sculpt a new wrecking ball for whatever reason. It's supposed to be like a prisoner's ball and chain, right? But just like the old Bath, they sculpted it way too big. The scale is crazy. And if these figures were more stylized, maybe that would make sense, but given the portraits, given the proportions of everything, it's just very, very odd to have man holding a wrecking ball. Of all of these, he's honestly the worst of the wave, by far. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was able to get monetized, and that last video did well enough that I made like $60 off of it. I've never made money off of a YouTube video before, so that's great. The kinds of videos that you want to see are the kinds of videos that I want to make. So in the comments, please let me know any ideas of topics that I could cover. I've already got like 20 pages or so of ideas in this notebook. So I'm going to be good for a while, but it's good to have, you know, security. Anyway, okay. So finally, I want to talk about Spider-Man. So when this wave was originally revealed, Spider-Man looked like a complete dud. So much so that I looked at him once and I kind of wrote him off. But now that I'm actually scrutinizing the wave, looking at every single figure, I noticed that Spider-Man could maybe be the sleeper hit of this wave. Now, that sounds silly to say for a Spider-Man figure. Of course, it's going to sell. But I think it might be the best designed, aside from one thing. One kind of major thing, but we'll get to it. I feel like this is one of the few Marvel Legends figures that kind of like tells a story. One of the accessories that comes with this figure is like a little bug symbiote. And this figure kind of represents the transition between the regular Spider-Man and that black suit that came into the previous wave, even though it's a totally different base body, but whatever. It looks like the design starts from the hand, as if he had just touched that bug, and it's crawling up his arm and up his neck. There's a separate piece that goes under the head. You can put that accessory on maybe the black suit Spider-Man figure with a normal Spider-Man head from Beyond Amazing or something like that, the first appearance one. If you're able to track down this figure, you can probably create a pretty cool transitional display, almost like Clark Kent ripping off his suit to become Superman, Bruce Banner bursting out of his shirt to become the Hulk. And I didn't notice this when I first saw the figure, but there's actually some battle damage on the other arm. It's almost like a leftover from the battle damage Spider-Man from the Magik Deluxe set, whatever. And I'm pretty sure I've seen people swap the arms on those two, and either the colors match really closely or they're perfect. I feel like it's a creative release that harkens back to that original Mattel line without being an exact copy, just another Spider-Man figure. Even though this would have been a good opportunity to get a standard Spider-Man figure at a relatively cheap price. Now, I think the only bad thing is the transition of the black suit from the upper torso to the mid-torso. It just stops at the break in the sculpt, and it looks really not great. It's the one thing that kind of pulls this figure down from being the best of the wave, in my opinion. So here's what I would have done. What puts a bow on this video in particular. I would have moved around the horizontal deco hits on Constrictor and Absorbing Man to save a few pennies on those figures to create a transition on that middle piece of the torso on Spider-Man from the symbiote to his actual suit. But that's what I've observed just from watching other people's reviews and just staring at the promo pictures. Just a couple little odd, strange decisions that I feel like just ends up costing Hasbro more money than if they had just thought about it a little bit longer. The last couple of my videos have been doing oddly well considering how short of a time I've been doing this. So if you liked this video and you want to see that success continue, give me a like or even a dislike. I'll take either one. In the comments below, let me know what kind of topics you want to see me cover. But also, I'm sure a lot of you have gotten these figures in hand. What do you think of them? And if you want to see me analyze the other 3 figures in this wave as soon as it comes out, make sure to subscribe. You can turn on notifications if you want to. I mean, it would help me, obviously, but I don't do that, so I don't expect you to. And I'll give you a little tease. Falcon, not great. Daredevil, mostly fine. And Magik, surprisingly, has one of the more egregious design decisions that I have seen in this wave. I'm Glenn, and this is Super Articulated. I actually wanted to give a quick update on that Spider-Man 2 18-inch Spider-Man. I have not fixed him yet, but he broke in pretty much the perfect way that he could have. It was just along the seam line. So only I have to dedicate the time to do that, so it's going to take 2 years. 1%. Hopefully I can stop this camera.